Hey! Today on the channel we're looking at Tales of Suspense number 66, an underrated Jack Kirby classic, and the origin of the Red Skull. Let's check it out. Hey comic fans, and welcome to Dangerous Comics. I'm your host, Dane Georges, and today we're talking about Tales of Suspense, number 66, and this is an issue that was featuring Iron Man and Captain America. And I love this little caption down here at the bottom. If one picture is worth 1,000 words, just imagine what these two pictures are worth, which is just amazing. And so the interiors of this, the Iron Man story is illustrated by Don Heck, and the Captain America story is by Jack Kirby. And although the interiors aren't all by Jack, Stan really liked to have Jack do these covers, kind of just to like really sell what the story was going to be. A lot of these times, stories were kind of built around what the cover was, the cover illustration featured. So, we have Jack doing an amazing Iron Man illustration, and although Jack doesn't do a ton of actual Iron Man, I just think his Iron Man is so strong. It's such a great interpretation of the character, and I feel like he always finds a way to make this mask emote, which is really hard to do. But this issue is probably most well known because this is the origin of the Red Skull. And although the Red Skull first appeared back in the original Captain America comics by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, this was the first telling of the Red Skull's origin ever. I don't think that was ever really touched upon in the older stories. So when Captain America was brought back for Avengers, Captain America started to get his own kind of solo titles, but he didn't get his own book right away. It was in this Tales of Suspense, which he shared with Iron Man. And Tales of Suspense is of note and well known because that is where Iron Man first appeared. So kind of a book that was tied to Iron Man, and then eventually Captain America was folded in as well, which is just kind of crazy in today's world, that these two characters didn't have their own book, kind of like right off the bat. But that was kind of the same thing with Ant-Man and Hulk shared a book for a while too, and Tales to Astonish. So the Tales of Suspense, Tales to Astonish, those were kind of books that were a little bit of you get two stories wrapped in one, usually like 10-page stories. So yeah, we can kind of just dive on in. I also want to point out I love this corner box art. You got the Cap from the cover of Avengers where he was appearing, and I believe this is a Iron Man drawn by Don Heck. But I think it's I want to really focus on the Captain America story, but I think you kind of really see the power that Kirby had when you're looking at kind of what other artists of the time were also doing. And so we get this splash starting with Don Heck, Iron Man, I fail, a world is lost. And so this is kind of like Iron Man fighting some like Submariner kind of villains. But I really have an affinity for Don Heck. I know he's not maybe everyone's favorite. I kind of came across his stuff first in Tales to Astonish because he did a lot with Giant Man and Ant-Man and stuff. And I think, Don Heck had his start kind of in the romance comics, and you can see he draws a very pretty ladies, very handsome men, and I think that is something, it's a quality that maybe Jack Kirby isn't as well known for like his pretty people. And I think that's kind of like you kind of see here where it's kind of a more normal scene, kind of people just doing normal things, and that's kind of where Don Heck really is at his best, just with these really good looking people. And then kind of getting into action. And I feel like just seeing this and then later seeing what Jack Kirby's doing, you kind of see where Jack had that punch to his art and how it really felt like the characters were like flying off the page. Also a really cool ad right here, kind of looking at where Marvel was at the time. This is 1965, but we have Amazing Spider-Man 25, Fantastic Four 39, X-Men 11, and Thor, who is in Journey into Mystery, is 116. And interesting to note that the only cover here not by Jack Kirby is the Spider-Man by Steve Ditko, and that was a book that Steve was also co-writing, because it was really also to mention this is a time when really all Marvel comics were done in the Marvel method, which means the artist is the writer as well. They're plotting the story out. They're breaking it down, and then Stan is doing the dialogue. And not to sell that short, because Stan's dialogue is so memorable and so unique. But and this is kind of like a kind of highlight where kind of like the Don Heck, he's got Iron Man kind of like swimming down here, which is really cool visuals. I love all the blue, love the coloring on these older comics of just letting kind of like the flat color. It really draws attention to the pops of red and yellow of the costumes. But yeah, we'll kind of go ahead, but kind of a fun little Iron Man story is he's like doing some underwater stuff using his transistor boots to like do stuff. But I really love just kind of like the empty expression that Iron Man has in a lot of this, and I think it's really brought to light, or maybe its most extreme moment is here in this final panel where it's like Iron Man is shocked, grabbing his face. We're getting someone saying, "Iron Man, Happy is gone, and I can't find Mr. Stark, you've got to help." And then, "Stark is never around when you want him. He doesn't deserve the military contracts, and I'll make the Pentagon realize it." And, Iron Man's doing his, like, Home Alone, like, slap his face, "Oh no!" And it really does work for this, like, empty, expressionless face that he's got, which I know there's not much difference, but there's something about the way Jack is bringing some expression, and there's even a little bit of a white eye in there. I just feel like there's a way to bring a little bit more life to that face mask than was always necessarily done. But really funny last panel. And then, well, we get some great the Merry Marvel Marching Society, their little club they want you to join, and then boom, right into the star of the show, the reason we're all here, some Jack Kirby art doing Captain America. And after Captain America appeared in Avengers, there was a few stories that they did in Tales of Suspense that kind of were like current day, but then after like the second or third appearance of Captain America in there, they kind of went back to do these Cap and Bucky during the days of World War II, and kind of highlighting maybe like what the golden age of comics was like, doing some like war comics, which is a place where Kirby really thrived and where I think he enjoyed going back to, especially since Captain America and this whole franchise was a creation of Jack alongside Joe Simon, and he then brought Captain America back into the 60s for the Avengers and the Marvel Universe. But I think you can really tell that Jack's having fun revisiting this character and his like rogues gallery and everything, and kind of just doing war stories again. But just such a great splash page here. We have the menacing character in the foreground. I love the way they've colored it with the purples and the blues. You've got everyone back here. And although this is a comic that has, this is approved by the Comics Code Authority, we are dealing with some kind of heavy things and maybe some stuff done off camera, but this is kind of like war crimes, war and all that. But I also want to highlight, the way I would have first read this story was in the Essential Editions. This is Captain America Essential Volume 1, and this story is in here. I love looking at these crisp inks by Chick Stone, and just really being able to see kind of like the Kirby art, but also seeing kind of like what they were doing in the color steps and everything. It's really interesting in how they're bringing things in the foreground and the background, but really, really great page. And I'll kind of flip alongside in the Essential Edition and see if there's anything else I want to kind of call out, but just a really fun setup. And I do think these word balloons kind of a funny placement, as it's kind of like covering up the Red Skull's butt. And so we get in, and Captain America has been caught, and it's kind of an interesting story. The issue before, Captain America was fighting Red Skull again, but it was revealed that it was a Red Skull impersonator, and he pulls off the mask, and it's this tycoon, aircraft tycoon guy, and kind of realizes, like, I knew you weren't the real Red Skull. And then so this issue kind of jumps right into it, but we later learn that Captain America has been captured because he's going to hunt down the Red Skull and find the real one. And so we kind of instantly, as Cap is tied up in this kind of torture room, Red Skull goes straight up, classic villain, and just starts giving him his origin, which I think is a little bit of an interesting move because, in the last issue we had like a pretender being the Red Skull, and then now we're getting Red Skull, the real guy, but we're really not like leaving anything up to guessing of who he could be. We're kind of like, okay, well, that guy wasn't the Red Skull, but this issue will tell you kind of who it was. But we don't get his name, it's just kind of more of a story. And so, we kind of get this Red Skull story as kind of like looking into his past. This German boy, I believe, they don't really full out say it's Germany. I really love this kind of like old villagey kind of background that Jack does here, kind of reminiscent of kind of the way that Jack would illustrate like Latveria in Fantastic Four, the city where Doctor Doom rules. And so we get this story of this like nameless boy. He said I believe they even kind of say he didn't have a name, and just kind of like his sad life as he grew up to hate all of his fellow man, because it says, years ago I was a nameless orphan, which is interesting, that he just didn't have a name. But kind of like, I love the way that they really hide his face, and they do just keep referring to him as, I thought we got rid of you, look alive, there are get sweeping or get out. So kind of like just keeping that open of, who is it, but it's also just, you don't need to know. It's kind of just this downtrodden man that had no identity and then got an identity. But I love this, like, he's telling his little sob story, and then Cap is like, lots of people had tough lives. My early years were no bed of roses either, but I don't waste time telling sob stories. And then, he gets smacked up against the head by Red Skull, you insolent dolt. And then we kind of jump back into his story as you'll live to regret that, Skull. And the Red Skull's getting back into his story. I really love the coloring that's done here. I love this Nazi guy that's in the foreground and how he's colored pink, kind of separate the foreground background. And just like Jack Kirby taking these moments where maybe a background isn't necessary, this panel is super busy of just of the kind of the Nazis coming in and like rummaging and kind of taking who they can, and then leaving just a pure white background, and then in the next panel just packing it in with detail. And in the Essential Edition you kind of see more of the in the Essential Edition you see more of that detail too, but there's just so many characters drawn in here, and they're all saluting Hitler. And we learn that the Red Skull at this point was a bellboy or a guy who worked in a hotel, and it ends up that he's working at the hotel that Hitler's in. And so we get an appearance from Hitler, and Hitler's like he's yelling at one of his men who let a spy escape, and he's like, this boy could do better than you. And he looks in his eyes and he's like, I see the seething, blazing hatred. I know those emotions. You too hate all mankind. And then he's like basically saying, I'm going to make you my prodigy. I love this background color change of going from like orangey yellow to orange to red as Hitler is talking, being like, you will never fail me. And then kind of a quick, montage almost of as the Red Skull gets trained and then is given his uniform. He's like, this guy is training him just to be kind of like a normal soldier, but Hitler wanted him to be something more. He wanted him to be evil personified, and gives him this costume, and he steps out, and then now we finally see the the face. This whole time we've just been seeing the back of this character's head or just his face in shadow. But now we finally see his true face, and it's the Red Skull. And so this is a point I think is kind of interesting. Like I was saying, this is done Marvel method, where Jack would have illustrated this, oftentimes leaving notes in the margins for what he wanted to be said or what the characters were saying. And we have this moment here where Hitler is like telling him to strike this man down who didn't do a good job training him, like proving himself. And the Red Skull grabs this guy's gun and then shoots him. And in the dialogue, Hitler is saying, "You blasted every button off his jacket, but you let him live?" And then he's like, "Dead, he is no further use to you." And so I wonder if that was Jack's intent for the Red Skull, not to kill this guy. It would make it more heartless to just gun this guy down. Maybe it was a note he had in there about like this expert move he takes about shooting all of the buttons of his shirt off. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting kind of extra thing, and I don't know if it's something that's maybe just a product of the comics code. You can't have people dying, even though it's kind of a war comic. And just a great transition to this next panel, and this is a classic Jack Kirby page. Jack Kirby was just like the master of these 4-panel pages. It's a really hard composition to pull off, especially just since you're kind of left with this negative space of the center of the page where all the panels meet is often kind of where your eye will go. But Jack just has such a great way of like having this motion kind of lead you in that traditional reading pattern of the 4 panels. And great transition from the page before Red Skull is shooting, and then we come to the modern or the current time in the story, and he's shooting at Captain America because Captain America wasn't paying attention enough. And then we just get some amazing action and like locomotion from Cap as he's like diving and jumping. And then I love this movement as the Red Skull is like going to like pistol whip Captain America, and the motion crosses in front of the dialogue balloon tail and then behind it, and really kind of sells some depth with that movement. But I think that this scene, really kind of brings to light what was different about Jack Kirby's art to like kind of the stuff that we were seeing in the beginning of this issue with Don Heck. Just this kind of movement and how the characters feel so alive on the page isn't something that necessarily always here. Some of these times these characters feel a little bit more like cutouts that like pasted on there. As much as I love Don Heck, he's just didn't. There was nobody like Kirby that could do this kind of movement and dynamic motion. I don't know if there still is, but I love these ads right here of the Ripley Believe It or Not sea monsters or sea monkeys, and then grow 2 living monsters. Pretty great ads. We then kind of do this transition. This whole thing really is just the Red Skull telling his story. So really kind of just go back into that flashback, but really great. I really love when artists are trying to do something interesting here, and the way that Jack illustrated this like superimposed Red Skull head over this like war-torn village, and it really made me think as I was looking at like that drawing in particular, just like how much like kind of like the building of the Red Skull's face kind of reminds me of how Jack would draw the Thing. And it just kind of, I guess it's mostly in with the brow and things like that, but in kind of just like the Muppet kind of mouth that would hang open or just kind of be animated like that, but kind of just very similar. But they it's just like a good guy versus bad guy. One's rock, one's a skull. He's got a nose, he has no teeth, he has teeth, but kind of the same kind of, the same kind of cheekbones, same kind of skull, just kind of, this is the bad guy version of what the Thing kind of is. I think that's just kind of interesting seeing like kind of like how Jack Kirby is kind of like building these pages or building the characters. I think that's really interesting. We just get some more great like war action. I think Kirby is drawing from some of his maybe experience being a veteran, being a soldier in World War II, and we just get more. The story is that Red Skull is talking about how he has now been kind of undermining Hitler to become like Hitler himself, kind of becoming that figure of pure evil and pure hate, and he's been systematically like killing other high-ranking Nazi officers. And I think that also kind of goes back to the first page of this story with when we're first introduced to the Red Skull right here. We get these lackeys, these minions they're saluting the Red Skull, like Heil to the Red Skull. It's not Hitler, it's the Red Skull. So kind of setting up Red Skull as, even a bigger menace, or a new kind of evil personified for this new age, even though this is kind of a flashback to the war. And then here's where we kind of get the catch up to where we started the story, that they shot down this ship, and that's where they caught Cap, and Cap then kind of like tries to break free again. Just some beautiful, beautiful colors here. I love this pink and purple against Captain America's blue. It really pops. And then, as Cap fights him again, he kind of withers away, and we get this explanation that this doctor had kind of like used this. He gave him this kind of serum or something like that is starting to turn, like brainwash Cap and turn him to their side. And we end with this cliffhanger of Captain America doing the Heil Hitler, and this is, way before the controversial Secret Empire story that Nick Spencer did, where Captain America said Hail Hydra. So, Jack and Stan were doing that, back in 1965. But just a really cool cliffhanger, and the next couple stories will deal with this kind of like brainwashed Captain America, as we try to see as he like, because his the Red Skull is saying like his target is like the supreme commander of the Allied armies. So he's gonna send him against America's big officials. But this is kind of just the beginning of this like spy turned evil, and then can he fight back? Can Bucky come save him? But we do know this is like a story in the past, so kind of getting us caught up to speed. A couple issues before this, they also retold the Captain America's origin story. So I think just really kind of trying to get this new Marvel audience acquainted with who Cap is, who his rogues are, and just kind of what kind of war stories Jack wants to do. And another really interesting thing, I love how, although we are getting this like backstory of the Red Skull, most of the story is really just happening in this like kind of bunker, this chamber where the Red Skull's keeping him. And in the back of this Essentials edition, there's a old Joe Simon and Jack Kirby story. It's Captain America and the Terror that was Devil's Island, and it's about them rescuing this tortured prisoner of war. I think it's really interesting because you can really see how much Jack Kirby grew as an artist. And I believe that it's really sad because this story is they said that it's written by Stan Lee, and let's look at it. It's totally like misquoted or wrong credits, because it says it's Captain America number 10 by Stan Lee, artist Joe Simon, and I believe that it's like most of this is wrong. It's actually Captain America number 5. It was by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, and I believe Joe Simon and Jack Kirby would pencil it, and then Joe Simon inked it. I hope that the lettering credit is at least right. This is kind of a cool little intro to this where you're getting all these pulled out things, but it's sad that got miscredited, especially that they credited it to Stan Lee, who had absolutely nothing to do with the original Captain America stories. So what I wanted to highlight is just that in this story, they're in a very similar background, very similar like kind of torture bunker area, and just seeing kind of like where Jack was and then where he got to in the 60s is just super inspiring. And just I think it's just, you don't get to the point that Jack Kirby was unless you put in those hours at the drawing table. You get those pages drawn, you draw like thousands and thousands of pages, because you got to get that page equity up. But it's just cool to see. And even just like, it's the same kind of idea, but just the way these textures are handled a little different gives better depth, better sense of place, but just really cool. And I thought that was just a cool addition to this Captain America Essential Volume 1. So that has been this issue of Tales of Suspense. We end with Mails of Suspense, which I think is a great mailbag name. Some more ads. And yeah, so that is Tales of Suspense number 66, featuring Iron Man and Captain America, with art by Don Heck and Jack Kirby. And just really wanted to highlight this issue. I always love looking at some Jack Kirby art. When I was able to grab this issue, I just pored over it, looking at these amazing colors, because I really had only ever read it before in the Essential Edition, and just really blew my mind. It's a great story. I love the Red Skull's design. I think especially here you're seeing more of what I was saying, with how similar Red Skull's kind of design is to kind of what Kirby was doing with the Thing too. He would do this kind of like open mouth Muppet, kind of like the jaw goes down so far kind of look. I love these big fingers too and everything. But just great issue. I really wanted to highlight it. I want to look at a lot more Jack Kirby, but I thought this was maybe a cool place to start, at revisiting one of his earlier creations of Captain America. But I would also love if you would support some of my comics as well. Speaking of Skull characters, I also have a Skull character called Doom Skull, and I have 3 issues of that, of him and his minion Bag Boy working in a grocery store. I also have a collection of my web comics and some zines and other stuff that you can check out at danegeorges.com. I'll have all that stuff linked in the description below. But I really appreciate you stopping by and checking out some comics with me, and I hope that you would come back again, and please remember to think and read dangerously. All right, have a good one.